Here is the full script for 12 gritty 1970 spy films that went harder than Bond. The pacing is designed for the Archie voice, deliberate, cynical, and atmospheric. To hit the 3-minute mark per film, the text dives deep into the socio-political context of the Watergate era and the end of Vietnam. The hook. If the 1960s were the era of spy fantasies, the 1970s were the era of spy paranoia. While James Bond was turning into a caricature, fighting in outer space and driving submarine cars, real cinema went underground. In the shadow of Watergate and the end of Vietnam, heroes were replaced by traitors, and the enemy was no longer in the Kremlin, he was in the office next door. Forget the gadgets. In the 70s, espionage became the art of surviving a world where conspiracy was the only reality. Here are 12 films that showed the dark underbelly of intelligence harder and more honestly than any Bond movie ever could. Number 12. The Serpent, 1973. Director, Henri Verneuil. In the world of 007, a defector is a trophy, a source of secrets, and the guest at a high-end safe house. In Henri Verneuil's The Serpent, a defector is a virus. This film strips away the romanticism of the Cold War and presents espionage as a cold, mathematical game of chess, where the pieces are made of human flesh. Yul Brynner plays Vlasov, a high-ranking Soviet official who crosses over to the West. But his arrival doesn't bring clarity. It brings a slow-acting poison that begins to destroy the Western intelligence apparatus from within. What makes The Serpent go harder than Bond is its depiction of intelligence as a purely bureaucratic nightmare. There are no high-speed chases through exotic locales. Instead, we get the suffocating tension of interrogation rooms and the grim reality of polygraph tests. The film captures that specific 70s dread, the realization that you can never truly know if a man is a hero or a triple agent. Verneuil uses a muted, almost clinical color palette that mirrors the soul-crushing nature of the work. The spy isn't the man of action here. He's a man of secrets, and in this world, secrets are a burden that eventually breaks your neck. It's a film about the death of trust, showing that in the game of superpowers, the individual is always the first thing sacrificed. Number 11. Scorpio, 1973. Director Michael Winner. Forget the playful rivalry between Bond and Felix Leiter. Scorpio is a brutal, blood-soaked look at the mentor-student relationship in the CIA, and it is anything but friendly. Burt Lancaster plays Cross, a veteran agent who knows too much, and Alain Delon is Scorpio, the assassin he trained, who is now hired by the agency to eliminate his own teacher. This is espionage as a generational suicide pact. The film goes harder than Bond by grounding its violence in a visceral, ugly reality. When Cross and Scorpio clash, it's not a choreographed dance. It's a desperate struggle for survival. Director Michael Winner, fresh off the grid of Death Wish, brings a raw, nihilistic energy to the screen. The 70s were a time when the public began to realize that the CIA wasn't just fighting foreign enemies. They were cleaning their own house with extreme prejudice. Scorpio captures the absolute loneliness of the operative. There are no glamorous parties, only cheap hotel rooms and the constant shadow of a gun. It's a story about a man who realizes he has spent his life serving a monster, only to find out that the monster has no loyalty to its servants. Number 10. The Black Windmill, 1974. Director Don Siegel. In the Bond universe, the hero's personal life is a footnote. In The Black Windmill, the hero's personal life is weaponized against him. Michael Caine plays Tarrant, a British agent whose son is kidnapped by a shadowy syndicate. But here's the twist that makes it go harder than Bond. Tarrant's own superiors in MI6 suspect him of orchestrating the kidnapping to cover up a diamond heist. Don Siegel, a master of hard-boiled cinema, strips away the institutional support that Bond relies on. Tarrant is forced to go rogue, not because he wants to, but because the system he serves has turned into a predatory animal. The film is a masterclass in 70s isolation. Kane's performance is a far cry from the cool Harry Palmer. He is a man on the edge of a breakdown, fighting a bureaucracy that is more dangerous than the kidnappers themselves. The Black Windmill of the title isn't the secret base. It's a desolate, haunting location that represents the futility of Tarrant's struggle. Espionage is shown here as a total loss of control, where the state doesn't protect its own, it devours them to avoid a scandal. Number 9. Special Section, 1975. Director, Costa-Gavras. While James Bond was busy saving the world from cartoonish villains in volcanic layers, director Costa-Gavras was busy exposing the terrifying reality of how governments actually operate when the lights go out. Special Section isn't just a spy film, it is a clinical autopsy of state-sponsored murder disguised as law and order. Set in Vichy, France during the Nazi occupation, the film follows the creation of a special section of judges, men of the establishment tasked with executing innocent people to satisfy the German occupiers. It is a story of legal espionage where the agents wear robes instead of tuxedos. This film goes harder than Bond because it removes the comfort of a clear moral high ground. In a Bond movie, the section is the good guys. Here, the section is a meat grinder fueled by careerism and cowardice. Costa-Gavras uses a cold, detached filming style that forces the viewer to sit in the room as these bureaucrats debate the lives of others over fine wine and cigars. There are no gadgets to save the day, only the scratching of pens on death warrants. The 1970s audience, still reeling from the exposure of real-world government lies, saw in this film a reflection of their own distrust. It shows that the most dangerous intelligence work isn't happening in the field. It's happening in the quiet, carpeted hallways of power, where morality is traded for political stability. It is a suffocating, intellectual thriller that proves the most terrifying enemy isn't the foreign spy, but the official who is just doing his job. Number 8. Illustrious Corpses. Cadaveri Eccellenti, 1976. Director Francesco Rosi. By the mid-70s, Italy was a cauldron of political violence and strategy of tension, and Illustrious Corpses captured that dread with surgical precision. This is the ultimate anti-Bond procedural. Lino Ventura plays Inspector Rogas, a man of integrity who is assigned to investigate a series of murders of high-ranking judges. But as Rogas digs deeper, the film shifts from a detective story into a vast, labyrinthine spy conspiracy that reaches into the very DNA of the state. He isn't fighting a secret society like Spectre. He is fighting the invisible architecture of his own country. What makes Illustrious Corpses go harder than Bond is its atmospheric nihilism. Director Francesco Rosi uses the grand ancient architecture of Italy to make the characters look small, insignificant, and already buried. The 70s were the decade of the deep state conspiracy, and this film is the gold standard of that subgenre. Rogas slowly realizes that he hasn't been hired to solve the murders, but to provide a convenient narrative for a coup d'etat. There is a specific, chilling scene where Rogas realizes that even his allies in the Communist Party are willing to let the truth die for the sake of political pragmatism. It is a film where the truth doesn't set you free, it marks you for death. For the Archie voice, emphasize the silence between the dialogue. This is a movie about what is not being said in the halls of power, showing that the real spy games are played by men who will never be held accountable. Number 7. The Mackintosh Man, 1973. Directed by John Huston. If Bond represents the peak of British prestige, the Mackintosh Man represents its absolute decay. Paul Newman stars as Reardon, an agent who is forced to go to prison under a fake identity to infiltrate a spy ring. But this isn't a glamorous undercover mission. It is a descent into a gray, nameless purgatory. John Huston, a director who specializes in stories of men chasing shadows, strips Paul Newman of his movie star charm and replaces it with the hollow eyes of a man who has been used up by his country. This film goes harder than Bond by focusing on the total erasure of the self. Reardon doesn't have a high-tech car or a contact in every port. He has a handler, the titular Mackintosh, who treats them like a disposable tool. The 70s were obsessed with the idea of the hollow man, the agent who has lied so much he no longer knows who he is. When Reardon finally breaks out of prison and heads to the cold, wet coast of Ireland, there is no sense of triumph. The film's pacing is deliberate and unforgiving, mirroring the slow realization that Reardon is being set up by the very people who sent him in. The finale doesn't offer a clean victory or a romantic getaway. It offers a cynical shrug. It suggests that in the intelligence world, loyalty is just a word used to convince suckers to die quietly. Huston's vision of the 70s is one where the sun never shines, the tea is always cold, and the only reward for a job well done is the chance to disappear before your own side liquidates you. Number 6. The Conversation, 1974. Director Francis Ford Coppola. In James Bond's world, a bugging device is just a handy gadget to help save the day. In Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation, it is a curse that slowly erodes the human soul. Gene Hackman delivers a career-defining performance as Harry Call, the best surveillance expert in the country. He is a spy for the private sector, a man who can pull a whisper out of a concrete wall. But Harry makes the one mistake a professional in his line of work can never afford. He starts to care about what he's hearing. This film goes harder than Bond because it transforms espionage into an act of voyeurism that leads inevitably to madness. The 1970s was the era of Watergate, a time when every American suddenly realized their life could be recorded on a magnetic tape. Coppola uses sound as the primary instrument of suspense. We hear the same snippet of a conversation recorded in a park dozens of times, and with each playback, the meaning shifts, becoming more sinister. Harry Call is the total opposite of Bond. He is lonely, anonymous, and terrified. He lives in an apartment with 3 locks, but he eventually learns that in the 70s, there is no such thing as a safe house. The final scene, where Harry tears up his own floorboards looking for a hidden microphone, is the most honest portrait of paranoia ever filmed. It's a movie about how, in a world of total surveillance, the spy isn't the hunter, he's the first victim. Number 5. The Day of the Jackal, 1973. Director Fred Zinnemann. James Bond always operates with flair. The Jackal operates with efficiency. In Fred Zinnemann's masterpiece, espionage and contract killing are shown as cold, clinical, and deadly mechanics. A professional assassin is hired to kill French President Charles de Gaulle. He has no name, no past, and no emotions. He only has a plan. The Day of the Jackal goes harder than Bond because it is completely devoid of melodrama. There are no villains explaining their grand schemes 5 minutes before the climax. The Jackal is a lone predator who spends weeks meticulously crafting a rifle hidden inside a crutch and forging multiple identities. The entire film is a duel between 2 systems, the icy intellect of one man and the massive lumbering machinery of the state. Zinnemann shoots this in a near-documentary style. We see the sweat on the brows of the gendarmes and the gray dawns at border crossings. Here, espionage is a job consisting of checking hotel registries and waiting in the shadows. There is no room for Bond girls or witty one-liners. There is only time, relentlessly flowing toward the moment of the shot. It is a film about professionalism pushed to a terrifying absolute, where the life of a world leader depends on how tightly a single small screw is turned. Number 4. Marathon Man, 1976. Director John Schlesinger. If Bond is a fantasy of invulnerability, Marathon Man is a manifesto of vulnerability. Dustin Hoffman plays Babe, an ordinary graduate student who gets dragged into a world of international spies and Nazi war criminals because of his brother, an operative known as Doc. In this world, the espionage of the past doesn't stay in the archives. It reaches out of the shadows and strikes you when you least expect it. The film goes harder than Bond because it grounds international conspiracy in visceral physical pain. The legendary dental torture scene isn't just a horror beat, it's a metaphor for how high-stakes politics invades the private life of an ordinary citizen. The 70s were a time when the ghosts of World War II still haunted the global intelligence community, and John Schlesinger shows that the old sins of the Secret Services never truly die. There are no gadgets that can turn off the pain here. Babe survives not because of Special Forces training, but through pure survival instinct and the ability to run. It's a film about how espionage is a dirty relay race where one generation passes only lies and suffering to the next. It is a world where your only ally might be your executioner, and the safe house is a trap with no exit. Number 3. 3 Days of the Condor, 1975. Director Sidney Pollack. In the Bond universe, the agency is your family. In 3 Days of the Condor, your agency is the hit squad sent to kill you during your lunch break. Robert Redford plays Joe Turner, an analyst who reads books for the CIA. He doesn't carry a gun, he carries a briefcase full of paper. He is the ultimate anti-Bond, a man whose only weapon is his ability to spot patterns. This film goes harder than Bond because it turns the CIA into the primary villain. When Turner finds his entire office murdered, he realizes he hasn't been targeted by a foreign power, but by a rogue element within his own government. The 1970s was a decade of the deep state revelation, and Condor captured that terror perfectly. There's no glamour in Turner's flight. He is a man trapped in a cold, gray New York, terrified of every ringing payphone. The film suggests that intelligence work isn't about protecting the country, it's about protecting the interests of men who will liquidate anyone who reads the wrong line of text. The ending is chilling. Turner leaks the truth to the press, but as he stands on a street corner, his handler asks, "How do you know they'll print it?" It is a film about the total death of institutional trust. Number 2. Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, 1979. Director John Irvin, TV miniseries/film. Bond is a superhero. George Smiley is a ghost. Based on John le Carré's legendary novel, this story presents espionage as a gray, bureaucratic hell. Alec Guinness plays Smiley, a retired spy brought back to find a mole at the very top of British intelligence. There are no car chases here, only the quiet turning of file pages and the sound of tea being poured in lonely rooms. It goes harder than Bond by showing that espionage is a game played by tired, middle-aged men who have sacrificed their marriages, their friendships, and their souls for a cause they no longer believe in. The 70s was the era of the great game turning into a stalemate. Smiley doesn't win through gadgets or strength. He wins through patience and the understanding that everyone, friend or foe, is compromised. The betrayal isn't a grand cinematic moment. It's a quiet, devastating realization that your closest colleague has been selling you out for years. It is a masterpiece of seedy, rain-soaked realism that proves the most dangerous thing in the world of spies isn't the bomb. It's a secret kept by a friend. Number 1. All the President's Men, 1976. Director Alan J. Pakula. The greatest spy film of the 1970s isn't about spies at all. It's about the people who caught them. All the President's Men tells the true story of how 2 journalists uncovered the Watergate scandal. In this film, the spies are the government itself, and the intelligence work is done by reporters in a brightly lit newsroom. It goes harder than Bond because it shows the real-world consequence of unchecked espionage power. The villains here don't live in volcanoes, they live in the White House. Using the visual language of a spy thriller, shadowy parking garages, whispered secrets from Deep Throat, and the constant fear of being followed, Pakula created the definitive portrait of a nation in collapse. This film marks the end of the 70s paranoia arc. It proves that the greatest threat to a democracy isn't a foreign agent, but the secret systems built to protect it. It is the ultimate anti-Bond movie. There is no tuxedo, no martini, and no happy ending. Only the hard, cold light of the truth, and the realization that the world will never be innocent again. In the 1960s, we dreamed of spies as knights in tuxedos. In the 1970s, those dreams died in parking garages and interrogation rooms. These 12 films didn't just entertain us, they warned us. They showed a world where the gadgets were replaced by paranoia, and the clear-cut villains were replaced by the very systems we were told to trust. If Bond was the ultimate fantasy of the Cold War, these films were its cold, hard reality. Truth became a weapon, and trust became a fatal mistake. Which of these gritty classics left you looking over your shoulder? Let us know in the comments. And remember, in the world of the shadows, no one is ever truly safe. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we continue to peel back the layers of cinematic history. Until next time.